One All-American Club combo, extra jalapeno, shooter likes it hot.
For just $1 more, you can make it a Happy Gilmore meal and get a collectible cup.
The Happy Gilmore meal. What's in it anyway? Shame? Agony? Bunch of napkins?
No, it's just your choice of sub, chips, drink, and a collectible cup.
That's ridiculous. I put my time in. I should be on those cups.
Hey, Shooter, you earn these cups.
Those are shooter's cups. Shooter.
Get all four before they're gone.
In lieu of the usual intro, I'm going to start by revealing Brian and I's private text conversations. Brian on Wednesday night said that Happy Gilmore 2 was a lot like Hulk Hogan coming back to the WWF in 2002, and I responded with a brother with a question mark after, and then the next day Hulk Hogan died, and it completely changed what this podcast was supposed to be. We are still going to discuss Happy Gilmore 2, but we decided that it was only appropriate that we had to address Hulk Hogan in some way. So we are going to talk about his most famous match in 2002, one of the most famous matches of his career, in fact, when he wrestled The Rock at WrestleMania 18. And I can't go another minute without saying that The Rock did post a tribute to Hulk Hogan and made it all about his career. So The Rock also staying very much on brand. My co-host, of course, is Brian. And Brian, do you feel like you killed Hulk Hogan?
Oh God, I'm knocking on a lot of wood right now. Because I was at the Sabu's last match too, so I don't even know. And the reason I made the comparison is because of it's just the same kind of story happened where like Happy leaves, he has this kind of like Rocky, thing going on when he leaves, and then he comes back years later, and then he's like on top again, which is kind of what happened in the movie. So it was the same thing with Hogan, and it was just like the story of Hogan coming back and reliving his glory, and I just thought of the same thing of Happy Gilmore, and then it just kind of went out of control the next morning. But listen. I'm a fan of the Hulk Hogan character. I'm not a fan of Terry Bollea. I was a big Hogan fan as a kid. I can't deny that. It was a big part of my childhood. I'm sad he's dead, but at the same time, it's like I think part of us have to like let go of some of the things that we idolize about him and not kind of like gloss over the things that he really did, and you can't just kind of like gloss over that, just the fact that he was an idol of yours, kind of thing. So I always separate the on-screen character, the fictionalized character, and the actual person portraying them separately. And that's kind of the way I approach things when it comes to art and stuff like that. And I know people don't like to call wrestling an art or whatever, but in this case, like, yeah, wrestling is an art, and this was an artist, and the artist was separate from the art, and that's what I kind of do. With Hogan, I feel like I talk about him almost every day with my friends in terms of like making fun, not making fun of him, but like making fun of the situations that he's gotten into in terms of the politics and stuff and the politicking, and every time like someone turns on each other in a movie or something, it's like, oh, Sid Justice and Hogan, oh, Paul Orndorff and Hogan, oh, Macho Man and Hogan, they're doing the mega powers. You know what I mean? It's always that because if you go by the that thing about archetypes, like Hogan is the archetype, right? The central hero, the central main character of the WWF story in the 80s and 90s. So yeah, it kind of makes sense that all these central like tropes and stuff happen to the character of Hogan. So all throughout these years, so it's kind of like makes sense that we as adults reference him almost every day in terms of like tropes and past storylines and just stuff about him that made him legendary. So I think that's kind of one of those things about like American legends, tall tales that get passed down from generation to generation. I think that's going to happen with Hogan, the way it happened with Babe Ruth. Giant sports figures like that. He is kind of the Babe Ruth, I guess, of wrestling, you would say. But yeah, I think I'm not a fan of the person. I do not, support anything he said about African Americans or anything like that, and just the shit he's been caught saying over the years and the Trump stuff. Hey, look, I'm not supportive of any of that, but I'm supportive of like going back and watching his old stuff in his career, like we have now, and we went back and watched the Rock match. But yeah, it's sad, but at the same time, it's all about letting go and kind of moving on and learning from his mistakes, as and I don't kind of support like people bashing his like trashing people who like honor his death. I think I'm saying I think that's a little trashy too, but again, that could be like these like online bots or whatever that we've kind of that James Gunn kind of put on blast in the Superman movie. But there is a small percentage of assholes out there that kind of went too far with it, so don't be those kind of people either.
I mean, look, the fact of the matter is that Hulk Hogan is in so many ways the main character of WWF, WWE. I think it's only it's fitting in some way that he was the last WWF champion in 2002. Literally, when they became WWE, Hulk Hogan was the champion. So in so many ways, and it's funny because he was only the champion for a month in 2002, and in that month, that's when they made the transition. So in some ways, it's very fitting. But I think the reality when you look at the totality of his career is that the second half of his life absolutely has as much to say about who he is as a human being as the first part, because you look at the first half of his life and you encompass everything that he did in the early part of his wrestling career as Terry Boulder, and then getting to do Rocky 3, and then getting the AWA run, getting into the WWF, and having one of the most legendary runs that any wrestler has ever had in this country, both in terms of being a draw and in terms of being, one of the most legendary performers of all time, whether you think he's a great wrestler or not. That's absolutely true. It's almost irrelevant for this conversation. But in terms of, once he started going into WCW and sort of the ridiculous contracts that he was getting, and then you get into his family life with Hogan Knows Best and Vince Russo, and the very odd run that he has in the WWE, coming back, kind of being in and out in 02, 3, 4, 5, and 6, and then going to TNA and just having this inexplicable wild run where somehow his last ever televised match was against Sting at Bound for Glory, and the last two matches of his career are in the United Kingdom for TNA, and he comes out to Eye of the Tiger, to all of the strife, the fact that he is partially responsible for journalism kind of deteriorating in this country with the Gawker trial, the emotional abuse of Brooke Hogan to the point where they were not even speaking, enabling his son to drink beer, and then what happened to John Graziano, and then trying to come back to WWE in 2014, being kicked out of the Hall of Fame for being a racist, and there's all that, and then coming back to the WWE. And let's be clear, in his last ever appearance on WWE TV, he was booed out of the building in Los Angeles, California. And look, it's not Madison Square Garden. Like, if it's Madison Square Garden, it's probably even more noteworthy. But the reality is that, like, this is a whole new era for WWE being on Netflix, and him getting booed is symbolic of so much. And I think if he had repented in some way for his past behavior, I think people would have been willing to give him a shot. But very clearly, any black wrestlers were never going to give him the time of day, and very clearly nobody else was either. And yeah, the last couple months of his life have just kind of been a tragedy. So at the end of the day, my feelings on Hulk Hogan are really not that complicated, I would say. I mean, part of the issue is, I became a fan in like 1995, and that is pretty much in terms of his major run, like 95 is one of the worst years of his career. Hello, Dungeon of Doom. But so for me, like Bret Hart, The Undertaker, Shawn Michaels, they have a lot more to do with me being a wrestling fan than Hulk Hogan does. So I don't know, maybe like there is a certain level of detachment, but I mean, it's just easy for me to identify the fact that Hulk Hogan was somebody who was a union buster, somebody who was a racist, somebody who just kept a lot of other wrestlers down and was incredibly selfish. And at the end of the day, a lot of his family wasn't speaking with him. And at the end of the day, like his character is reflected in how he was spoken about on social media. I mean, certainly there was a lot of love, but certainly there was a lot of not love there for Hogan, and I think that speaks to who he was as a person. I don't think, I'm certainly not judging either side necessarily about how people feel, especially those who did grow up with Hulk Hogan as their favorite wrestler. But the fact that there is such a split, to me, speaks to who he was as a person, and the fact that he has gotten a negative reaction at all is reflective of his behavior. He has nobody to blame but himself for the fact that he is getting as good of a percentage as he has gotten in terms of criticism, because I guarantee you, when look, Steve Austin is certainly not a perfect person, but he is not going to get near the vitriol. Whether that's fair or not, because obviously, there are some domestic abuse allegations, but he is not going to get nearly the vitriol from fans like you're seeing with Hulk Hogan. You just won't see that. And I would say the same thing about Bret Hart. Bret Hart is it's going to be very complicated with Bret Hart, certainly. Um, but it just feels like here we have somebody who is one of the most iconic performers of all time, and it is very difficult to celebrate.
Yeah, it's mixed emotions, mixed feelings for myself as well. Like I'm very sad that he he passed away. Legends always passing is always sad, but again, the person himself, polarizing figure for sure. And I am not a fan of what he was doing in the later half of his life, but I wasn't really paying too much attention to it that it was like, upsetting me every day. I kind of just let it go. As I said before, I'm able to separate artist from the artist, so it wasn't as, when I heard he died, I wasn't as like sad as, compared to other wrestlers when I heard they passed away, what I'm saying, because of the, the stories and what he's been doing and all that kind of thing. So I did have this kind of detachment already, but not necessarily in like a not a nihilistic kind of way or like a snarky negative kind of way. Just like, I can see, the person for what he was and just appreciate the work that he left behind. So that's kind of where I'm at with it. And in terms of this match, it was fun looking back at this match with The Rock. I made a lot of, I don't know, I just made all these connections in my head. Like Jim Ross was on the call when Hogan lost to Yokozuna, and then that was his last WWF appearance for what, 9 years or something.
And
And
then
on the
The
call
Rock
again,
is Yokozuna's family member,
yeah,
right?
his Japanese cousin, right? Like The Rock has a
Don't even
Japanese
get me
cousin named
started.
Yokozuna.
It's
Oh
something
boy.
else, man. It
Yeah,
is something
racism
else.
in wrestling is a whole different thing when it comes to, taking over other people's cultures, but that's just a whole different can of worms that I don't want to go into right now that gets me upset. But, it's just kind of weird that the family connection, the Jim Ross connection, just a lot of weird stuff kind of coming together. The fact that Montreal like totally turned the tide of what this match was supposed to be. Going in, it was supposed to be babyface Rock, heel Hogan, and Montreal just did not care for it. They just made their own storyline apparently because people forgot that Hogan drove a semi truck into the Rock's ambulance a week before or something, or 2 weeks before, which was horrific. And yet they're able to be cool with each other 2 weeks later. That's the one thing about this match that gets me is like I remember the build
2002
up to
is,
this match.
2002 is a pretty baffling year, I would
The
say.
first 3 months are baffling because of the old NWO
The whole
situation.
year is baffling. Because the Brock Lesnar. The way that Brock Lesnar is introduced, and he's losing to the title to the freaking Big Show at Madison Square Garden. Shawn Michaels returns. The NWO returns. Kevin Nash injures himself twice. The plane ride from hell. There's 2002 is a book that is probably has been
Yeah,
written many
it's a
times.
crazy, crazy year because of when the death of WCW just led to this year of chaos because
And
it's like,
Steve
what do you
Austin
do?
as well. Like Steve Austin is
You have
injured
all this
and
talent
drunk
at
and a
top at the
mess.
top that just want to be at the top because there's just so many people trying to get to the top. It's like you have
Yeah,
all these different faces. So
and The
that's
Rock is
kind of
in and out.
unfortunate.
Look,
Yeah, and the Rock's in and out.
this is like supposed to be a passing of the torch, but really, The Rock is basically done as a full time wrestler a year later. So it is a strange match to look back contextually, because you would think, yes, Hulk Hogan is passing the torch, but the reality is that The Rock does not factor very much into the WWE's future. So it is a very strange artifact, because of course what people remember the most is the fact that Hulk Hogan got this unbelievable reaction, and WWE decided, okay, we're going to put the belt on him again, and that did not really work at all. And he was losing the title a month later, and then Hogan is doing tag matches and wins his first tag titles. He's feuding with Kurt Angle and jobbing to Kurt Angle, losing to Brock Lesnar, and then he's kind of done with his first nostalgia run. until he comes back to feud with The Rock and Vince McMahon at No Way Out 2003 WrestleMania 19. But I mean, in terms of him physically, I mean, this is probably one of his better matches. They did a really good job, um, just kind of hiding his limitations, and I think this match is a really good representation of that. I mean, the crowd is what carries this for the most part. Like in terms of an actual match, I don't know that it's a great in ring classic, but the crowd is just with Hogan the whole time, and Hogan, of course, is going to play this up to the nth degree because this is who he is. Like he's not gonna try to turn heel at this point. Like he's gonna get his attention because he wants the run. Like he want that. Like anything that we know about Hogan is that he wants the run.
Yeah, and famously at the end of WrestleMania 6, he gets the crowd to kind of get sympathized for him. Therefore, it kind of takes away the spotlight from Ultimate Warrior
Yep.
when it's supposed to be Warrior's moment. So that was very kind of similar as to what happens at the end of this, but I think they probably already knew that the crowd was going to switch anyway because they did this whole NWO turn at the end, which kind of seems like, whoa, what the fuck is going on? They just got back, but I guess because of the crowd reaction, they just immediately came up with a plan that night. Because it didn't seem like a long-term idea. This seemed like a oh shit, we got to turn Hogan like now kind of thing. Like we didn't prepare for this, even though we just had him nearly kill The Rock 2 weeks on 2 weeks ago on Raw. But in the end, this match is like really all about psychology and crowd psychology and studying the crowd and what they want. Because you always hear about wrestlers going in with their matches already mapped out, but then they forget to factor in the crowd, and that's why a lot of old timers are going. You don't want to go in knowing what to do. You want to go in there and just feel it out and listen to the crowd and call it in the ring and blah blah blah. So it's kind of a lesson in that, which is a good,
And
it's
like
good to have
anything
those kind
else,
of
there
lessons in
is
wrestling because
like
you got
in
to
the
mix the
end,
both sometime.
like there's a balance that you have to strike. I mean, Randy Savage and Ricky Steamboat is generally agreed upon to be one of the best matches ever, and that's one of the most scripted matches you'll ever find. It's just a matter of like balancing the things that you need versus what you find with the crowd. I mean, if you're smart, I mean, and the problem is that like there's no house shows anymore. There really isn't a chance to warm these matches up. But like that's part of the thing is that Savage and Steamboat could script the match because they were doing their match around the horn and could figure out what was working and what wasn't, so that you could script it out. But I mean, look, Hulk Hogan. Do you need to really plan things out? I mean, Hulk Hogan is so physically limited that you could kind of get away with a lot at this point. At this point in 2002, or you couldn't get away with a lot. I mean, you're going to get the leg drop, the boot, the hoof, the body slam. Like those are the things that you do, and I don't think that this is not a New Japan finishing sequence where you need to intricately plot everything out. Like you can get away with just kind of doing what needs to be done. And I mean, look, the difference between this match and a month later with Triple H, I mean, it's pretty stark. That Triple H match is really bad.
There's probably different reasons for that. Probably Triple H had a boo-boo face, is my guess too.
I mean, there's
Uh,
a possibility. I mean, Triple H is not
Yeah,
having
and
good
by boo-boo
matches.
face, it means it's like when a guy knows he's going to lose the title and he's not really 100% into it because he knows he's going into the match losing, and you can kind of tell. You can kind of tell with like Keith Lee sometimes, which is kind of one of his weaknesses. He's just one of the examples, but that was definitely a boo-boo face movie.
Mercedes
Another
Monet
one,
and James Storm are pretty
another
infamous
one.
for that as well.
Yeah. But in terms of this match, I think the highlight call for me, obviously, is personally oh my God, that's the movie Beat Andre the Giant with, like, because that's a generational kind of callback kind of thing. So that's always my favorite call of the match. Um, Overall, I think it's not a 5-star match, and I rate things at a 5 when it comes to matches. This is like a 4.25, maybe 4.5, just for the spectacle of it all, the WrestleMania of it all, the entrances, all that kind of thing. You got Hogan, with the belt, with his weight belt doing his gimmick, so that's that carryover from WCW.
It's
And
the
I
Hollywood
did like
Hogan persona.
yeah, the Hollywood Hogan. I did like how he adapted to the WWE main event style at the time, because if you notice, like they had a new style from like '98 onward, where it's like they have the higher drama times turns at two thirds of the match. You turn up the drama. You start doing the back and forth with the finishers, which they did here. Hogan stole the Rock's finish, blah blah blah. So that kind of feels like this WWE main event that Austin Rocket kind of perfected up until this point, right? Because that was kind of like the style of the main events at the time
I
for
mean, that's
WWE.
that's because Steve Austin got hurt, and that's why the whole main event style changed because of
Yeah. And Hogan coming in was used to like we're seeing him in like 10-minute matches, 15-minute match. This actually went like 20. So I was shocked that it even went that long. But thankfully the crowd kind of stretched it at the beginning, which is great. So they had time to like pad it. But again, it's like 20 minutes
they
from
they
Hogan. It's
certainly
like
did
there's a
pad
lot.
it.
It's a
Yes,
lot. So credit to him.
they certainly did, and that will serve as our transition point into talking about the movie that we were supposed to just talk about by itself, that being Happy Gilmore 2. The return of Adam Sandler to this character. You've been doing some bonus Adam Sandler watching, which makes you kind of a sadist. Given some of the movies that you were watching, we talked about Happy Gilmore a few weeks ago. We both agreed it was definitely on the higher end of Adam Sandler comedies. And I mean, look, there is a graveyard of sequel comedies a mile long, and I would Brian and I are going to disagree. I certainly would put this in that graveyard at this point. There's a number of reasons why. I certainly do have some positive things to say about this movie as well. I don't think that it is a complete failure. It is not the worst movie ever made, but I think it is a huge disappointment if you're going to bring this character back. And I mean, look, I think that for me, there are way too many cameos. Um, Big spoiler alert: the decision to kill Veronica, and again, we are going to disagree on this. I think that is a disaster. I think it is a huge turnoff for this movie. Just again, fridging a female character is something that is just it is so passe at this point and cliche that we just really need a moratorium on it. And if I was not talking about this movie for the podcast, I don't know that I would have watched the movie after that first 10 minutes.
Wow. Okay. Well, in terms of that spoiler, I figured it kind of plays into the whole thing about him being a broken dude who accidentally killed his wife, and that's kind of like the joke of it. Um, by accidentally killing his wife,
This is a
folks.
comedy. I do need to point out
I
this
know.
is supposed to be a
Yes,
comedy.
he hit the ball really hard, and she was just standing in the way. So I
Stupid.
think there's another movie. I think there's a movie called Simon Birch where there's a similar incident, except with a baseball. So I guess this is a thing in sports movies where people just get hit in the head with balls and die. I guess that's part of the joke within. I guess it's a joke of a trope or something. But I get why they did it because it allows the character of Happy to be at his lowest point. He's got 5 kids. After that accident happens, his life goes to shit, becomes a deep alcoholic because he feels so guilty and all that kind of thing. So it gets a little serious, folks, a little bit, which I appreciated. And for like at least the first 45 minutes, it felt like Rocky Balboa, specifically Rocky Balboa, number 6, in terms of like, Adrian has been fridged in that one, so to speak. And, and it's all about him trying to rebound and find himself where he's at 58 years old, kind of similar to Rocky. And I'm glad they kind of took those points because there's that connection to Rocky that with Carl Weathers being Apollo Creed, so there's that connection there. And I mentioned before how much he's so good at being that coach like level figure. And then of course I know this is going to be another complaint coming up in Naked Gun, but I think they're going to address it better than this did. But this idea of everyone has a son or a daughter of the person from the previous film, which I know probably annoyed the shit out of you, Jerome, but I just loved it because that's kind of like a joke of what like legacy sequels have become. So it's like a joke on legacy sequels. Because I think they're going to do the exact
Yeah,
same thing in Naked Gun, but
Naked
just
Gun
make it
is
even
handling
funnier.
it. The Naked Gun addressed it in the trailer in the best possible way. If you've seen the trailer, you know what it is. It absolutely
And
Naked Gun is parodying it
what the
directly,
best part about
so
that Naked
I
Gun
have zero
trailer
problem.
So the best part of that trailer, really quick, is that if you watch it in different types of crowds and see which people are laughing at the OJ joke, very funny and telling. Just gonna say that, very funny and telling.
It can be for sure. I mean, look, to me the problem is like, look, if Adam Sandler wants to put his daughters in a bunch of movies and his wife and stuff, like I don't really care necessarily. But to me, it's like if you're going to try to tell this very serious story, you are not balancing the tone very well at all. I mean, this movie, like again, I come back to the cameos. Like if you want to tell this story, like go for it. Like please give me a serious movie, but then don't give me literally a celebrity in every scene. Like why is Eminem the son of one of the characters? Why is Chris Chelios in this movie? Like Chris Chelios is literally in this movie for like 2 seconds. If you blink, you will miss him. and it's ridiculous. Like Travis Kelce does not need to be in this movie. Like I mean, like I get
Okay,
Dan
so
Patrick.
so from what I've heard in the interviews,
Stephen A. Smith absolutely does not need to be in
okay,
this.
okay, so I've been doing some also like background interviews with Adam Sandler on his various appearances lately, and from what I've heard, and this kind of makes sense, is that like he's the kind of guy that if he's got a group of friends in a movie, he wants to make sure that everyone is like happy and having a good time, and like a lot of people came up to him and wanted to be in the movie, so he felt obligated that all these, even though they're celebrities, right? All these people that have looked up to his movie for the last 30 years and idolized the character really wanted to be a part of the movie. So it's like, how can I say no to all these celebrity friends of mine that really cherish this character of mine? How can I say no to let them be in the movie, right? It's like that's my
I
mentality.
mean,
Is like,
you can say no. You can say
I
because
mean,
there's too
but this is
many.
an Adam Sandler movie. It's not like an Oscar movie. I feel like this is a kind of movie where it's like we appreciate Adam Sandler for where he is throughout his career, and like him just hanging out with a bunch of celebrities and trying to make people laugh. Like I
But
get that.
this isn't like if this is murder mystery, like that's one thing. But this is like people actually have a real enjoyment of Happy Gilmore. Like I don't know, have some respect for the first movie. Like this movie just doesn't feel like it respects the first movie almost in any way. I mean, I think that to me is the biggest problem with it is that it really doesn't feel like, again, to me this felt like a parody of the first movie in so many ways because of what they do to a lot of the characters. And again, I don't necessarily have a specific problem with Adam Sandler bringing in his friends and bringing in his family, but it's just like there's a certain point where you also have to say no. Like you don't need, again, you don't need Travis Kelce in this movie. Like his presence is superfluous. Chris Berman, I mean, my God, Chris Berman, really superfluous. Like Vern Lundquist, I get it. He's in the first movie. He is a golf commentator. That actually makes sense. It is very surprising to me how much this 88-year-old man is in this movie, though.
And dressed in some spectacular colors, I gotta say, in the second half in the Maxi tournament.
It's
Like,
I hope
so
he
I
got paid
appreciate, you know
extremely
me
well.
at colors, and as soon as I saw that, I was like, oh, there. God, they're doing the Craig Segler, aren't they? Isn't it Craig Segler? Wasn't it?
The yes, Craig
Yeah,
Sager,
for TNT
R.I.P.
and
Yep.
NBA, REP, but God love his suits. But that's kind of where I'm coming from. I'm not coming from this from like a serious thing, even though I did kind of see some Rocky Balboa parallels. But in terms of like the ridiculousness of his, like, yeah, it's funny. They're doing an NWO gimmick with golf because that's kind of like a real life thing right now. I forget the name of the league, but Saudi Arabia League that's that swooped up a bunch of top golfers years ago, and now they do different types of golfing and not just necessarily the 18 holes, but different types of golf games and stuff like that. So I get the idea. So it makes sense to me, and I just find it weird that like, but I don't know if you know this, but like Kyle Newchek, the director, he's like the guy from Workaholics. He's one of the creators of Workaholics, not one of the main three, but one of the background
Right.
characters. But he
I'm
he
sure he
directed
got
a
paid
lot.
very well to direct this
But
too.
those guys are really big wrestling fans, and it's you can see it in the Workaholics show, and just like him dressing
I
up as like
mean,
Randy Savage in one of the
MJF and
episodes.
Becky Lynch are in this movie,
Right.
so
So my point is
absolutely.
that like this idea of this new league and treating it like sports entertainment versus traditional wrestling, I felt like they just watched a bunch of NWO stuff and just went with it. And DX type stuff and just like fuck
Right.
tradition and like all that shit. And I
I
was
mean
like,
the
oh,
plot
this is
is.
so like wrestling related. So that's why I was like buying into the second half more so than a buddy of mine who was like
I mean,
really
the
loved the
first half
first
is
half.
definitely better. The first half is definitely better, but I mean, to me, the movie is just still ridiculous. Like Benny Safdie is kind of doing his own thing. I don't know, man. Like this is just a really baffling movie. So I did say I do want to say some positive things about it because I really like there are some things that I do think work. The montage where Happy gets ready for the U.S. Open or whichever tournament, that first one, I think that is a really well done montage, and it is probably one of the best. Like in terms of the sports elements, it is probably one of the better sports elements. Adam Sandler's daughters are all good actors, and I definitely think that they are being positioned very well to be in movies themselves without their father at some point, and I think that's going to happen really soon. Just in terms of some of the other positive elements, the actor from Breaking Bad who played Huel, whose name is escaping me right now. He was also really good. I think I mean, you're not going to replace Carl Weathers, but I do think he did a really good job of taking his place and kind of doing something different, but also similar at the same time. So I give him a lot of credit for kind of stepping up and taking over what is kind of a difficult role. Like that is definitely not a role that is ideal, but I think he did a good job with it. MJF, I think, did a good job. I think the family dynamic stuff actually works. I don't, I like the fact that his sons are kind of ne'er do wells, but they do love their father. I actually like that. I like that they didn't have a lot of family tension. Um, Again, I think that, look, I mean, again, I come back to the plot being nonsense, but I do think that it was great. It is great to hear Vernon Lundquist's voice, who we don't hear anymore because he is basically retired from announcing. So it was good to hear from him. And I do think that there is a good movie to be found here. Oh, Bad Bunny. That's who I was stalling because I was trying to remember. Yes, Bad Bunny is one of our great performers right now. Like, and I know that he is primarily associated with music, but you look at what he is capable of doing in a wrestling ring. I look at his performance here. He is an extremely charismatic individual, and I am not being sarcastic. He is genuinely one of the best performers that we have going right now.
Well, I've not seen this match that people have been talking about. I don't even know who he faced. I know he headlined a pay-per-view or something.
He
Um,
wrestled Damian
was it
Priest in Puerto Rico, and he wrestled at a WrestleMania.
okay? Okay. All I know is that he's funny as fuck, and he gets the old school like not character actor, but like getting into character for a comedy movie and just committing to the character and coming up with all these
I mean,
nuances and
he's
the
really
fact that
good.
like I laughed my ass off when he started walking and then Adam Sandler's like, you got to take the clubs with you and he picked it up like a fucking box. And then he's like, there's a thing on the back to carry it if you want to do that too. And he's
I mean,
just
he
so
steals the
like
movie. He absolutely steals the
he
movie.
was
Like,
great.
if the movie
Yeah.
had been honestly, like I said, I would have deleted a ton of these cameos and put more focus on him and Sandler because their dynamic was great.
Well, apparently Nikki Bell is pissed off because her cameo got cut, and that was 20 minutes of the movie they apparently cut out
I
completely.
mean, this movie is too
So,
goddamn long.
so in terms of the AEW WWE war, I guess AEW came out on top of this one because Becky
I
Lynch
mean,
lost in the movie.
MJF had
MGF
the bigger
technically won in the
role.
movie. Yeah.
I mean, I don't necessarily put a lot of stock in that, but I mean, look, I think this was a good role for Becky Lynch. I think she got to shine very briefly. She got to touch Rory McIlroy, which is weird.
Okay, so I guess this is a good transition point to the hip discussion. Now, as soon as they talked about the hips and then doing that whole ligament surgery thing, I immediately thought of Tommy John. Did you think that too?
I thought it was completely ridiculous. I wasn't against the idea of the of this as a plot point. I just I needed I needed more, if that makes sense. And I don't know what I needed more of. But again, it really felt like it contributed to the tonal whiplash of this movie. Also, Haley Joel Osment is kind of like the third or fourth lead, and he doesn't enter the movie until like 45 minutes in.
Yeah, I he's got a good performance, man, because he just kind of shows up out of nowhere, and I think they do that on purpose to kind of bury the lead that he's in it, because it's like I think you want that reaction of like, holy shit, is that Haley Joel Osment? And then he becomes this character in the movie. So I think that's part of the they
I
kind
mean,
of
I
low key
guess,
did put
but
him in
like
the
he's
trailer.
still in stuff. It's not like he isn't in things. Like he was just on he
Yeah,
was in 2 episodes of Poker Face.
yeah. I don't know. It's just so funny because we just see him as the Sixth Sense kid, and I guess that plays into his casting. I think because by
I
doing
mean,
that,
it
it's
has
like
to
you kind of
clearly.
yeah, because then you're kind of like downplaying him. Like, is this character going to be like, just a simple-minded guy, or is this guy going to have issues? Because we're so used to this kid that's playing this part have issues. So I think that part's part of the casting, but I think he fit that idea of like this guy that like I don't know, because in terms of golf, you don't have to be the most athletic person in the world to win, which is why I love the John Daly stuff in this movie. Haley Joel Osment and the hip gimmick, I thought it was kind of stupid, but then it made me think of Tommy John surgery, which is a real thing in baseball, as we've talked about. So in a way, I guess it makes sense if that was a real thing. They just kind of made it like a pseudoscience, I guess. But it did explain how that Haley Joel Osment goes from like doing an average of like 325, 350 in terms of like his driving range to about 500 at Happy Gilmore level. Um, it's just really funny stuff. And then Christopher McDonald coming back, I think doing the Joker gimmick, I thought was really funny. And then out of nowhere doing a whole like redemption arc caught me off guard. I really thought he was going to join Ben Safdie in the Maxi group. But I guess this idea that even him that breaks tradition, and he's all about tradition and the sanctity of the sport of golf. So I thought that was a really interesting twist. He ends up joining Happy, and it's not something I'm not used to. Like I've been watching a lot of Dragon Ball Z all my life, and in the last couple seasons of the latest series, they had one of the bad guys, Frieza, who's a notorious planet destroyer, genocidal maniac. They gave him a babyface start in the show because they needed him to help save the universe. So I'm used to these ideas of like these two guys who have hated each other have to come back on the same side for the singular good of the sport, I guess, or whatever. So that worked for me. And I did like the little jabs at, the Joker when he was on the steps. There's a spoiler alert, folks, but he's on the steps of this like lunatic asylum and he's dancing like the Joker. And I thought, okay, I'm laughing at this because I'm not a big fan of that Joker anyway. So I thought that was a good little jab right there.
Yeah, that
But
first movie is an abomination. It's funny. People hated the sequel. I was like, I kind of like the sequel more, but I
I'm
don't
not
know. We
even
were
going to
probably
watch the sequel, Jerome. I'm not even going to go there.
it's
But I
it's
do like
fine.
John
I mean,
Daly.
it's weird. I mean, John Daly's good. I mean, John Daly's clearly,
And he's more
fine with
perfect
making fun of
example of
himself.
like the reason I love golf, and I'm not like a big golf fan, but I love the sport as a whole. I love golf games, video games. I love watching it every once in a while. Used to play a little when I was younger, but this idea of like a non-athletic guy can come in and just dominate a sport, or not necessarily dominate, but just be really good and having great performances and being consistent and landing at the top five all the time, or something like that. That's John Daly,
Oh,
and he's very out of shape in this movie.
Shooter McGavin calling Bryson DeChambeau a choker was also funny.
Yes, and they do a couple of those little jabs too because they show other footage of other golfers fucking up on the team. So, yeah, it has its moments, and I'm more high on it than Jerome is. I'm giving this a 7 out of 10, which is pretty much the same I gave the original Happy Gilmore. Just for me, it's just everything I wanted out of the sequel I got, and I'm very satisfied. I didn't have that many like high expectations. I just knew that there was gonna be a bunch of celebrity cameos. Shit changes in 30 years. You can't expect people to stay the same, right?
I mean,
Um,
I wasn't expecting that. I mean, again, I don't have an issue with the family stuff. It's just I think the fact that they immediately did a fridging like immediately turns me off. And this movie had a lot to recover from, and certainly it wasn't. In some ways, it wasn't as bad as I was expecting, but in some ways, there were still some really bad parts to it. So I settled at about a 4 out of 10.
if anything, this kind of like ends like Adam Sandler month on the correct note, where it's like there's this big like anti-negative feedback from the critics, and there's going to be a critical audience score that's going to be like 70% or above, I bet.
I
And
mean, the critic score is pretty. I mean, it's at like
it's
a
probably the same as the
55%.
original, to be honest. Like
It's at
the
about a
original never got good reviews
55% right
anyway.
now. I mean, it's
Yeah.
definitely. I've seen some positive reviews from critics. So
And look, I don't expect positive review from critics at all because it's Adam Sandler. Like he's been on record saying like the critics have never been on his side. It's always about the fan reaction and how that's how he bases his like, decision making in every movie he makes. Not the critics' reaction, but the fans' reaction. So in this case, I think he checked off a lot of the boxes and
I mean,
left a
and
lot of,
that
you
is
know,
certainly fine. I mean, that's why he's doing the Netflix movies at this point. But I mean, again, this is a movie that is going to draw in, I think, a bigger crowd than even a typical Adam Sandler movie on
yeah, and
Netflix.
it's a shame that like AMC is kind of like a side banter, but AMC has extended their trailer times now to 30 minutes with a commercial or two in between at the 15-minute mark.
Yeah, it's pretty annoying.
I'm just saying, I went to the movies. Yeah, I went to the movies like 4 times in the last 30 days or something, and not one time did I see like an advertisement on the screen for Happy Gilmore 2. And every time I finish the end credits and we go to
I
like
mean,
Nicole Kidman,
there's no excuse for that.
it's like I tell myself I've seen the Fantastic Four trailer so many times now. I've seen the Superman trailer so many times now. this would be the perfect opportunity to even just put the goddamn trailer on there, even though you know that it's not going to be in theaters. But you know, they still advertise shows that are not going to be in theaters anyway. Just like look for this on TV or look for this product. Why can't they
It's
just
really
Netflix
stupid,
advertise the damn
honestly.
movie? I don't know. It's
No.
ridiculous. We have 30 minutes and no mention of a Happy Gilmore 2. So that's my rant, folks. But that's a whole different issue with
I mean, this is a movie that
Netflix
could
and
have
their
made
advertising.
$100 million. This is a movie that could have made 80 to $100 million. No reason it couldn't have, but for whatever reason, this is not what Netflix wants to do. And I mean, it's clearly a huge mistake. They're leaving a lot of money on the table, but this is kind of where we're at. Speaking of where we're at, we are going to be taking a very different path next month. We are going to return and discuss more Robert Altman. We had a very good time talking about Robert Altman a few months ago. So we are going to do that again in the month of August. As part of that, we will be discussing MASH next week. And so we've talked about an elimination chamber, but just like Robert Altman is kind of an obscure directorial figure, I kind of want to do a kind of an obscure WWF match. What do you think? Let's do. I mentioned this to you earlier, Brian. A six-man tag: Randy Savage, Harley Race, and Adrian Adonis versus Roddy Piper, Ricky Steamboat, and the Junkyard Dog from the February 23rd, 1987 Madison Square Garden show. It is an elimination match.
Yeah, there's a whole history around this time period about experimental six-man tag matches featuring high-level superstars at the top of the card that would months later become Survivor Series, folks. So there's a little bit of a background story to that as well, because this is not the only six-man tag elimination that was filmed at the time. There's also a couple of ones with like the Hart Foundation. There's another one with Hogan and Orndorff. They did a lot of testing with this match, and I think this is probably one of the better ones because of the ending. I won't spoil it, but it's a hot ending, and it's a rare ending you rarely see with Macho Man. Spoiler alert, he's one of the last guys left in the match, but still, it's a great match with a lot of characters. Perfect for 87 to set up WrestleMania 3. It's one of those ideal setup matches where it's a grudge match, but you get all the feuds involved, and it's perfect for a setup for a WrestleMania. So I love that. And we talk about MASH for the first time. I've yet to see this movie. I've heard so many great things. I've heard the show's amazing,
I cannot
but I figured
believe that you have never seen MASH before.
well, we talked about Robert Altman films this year possibly being a possibility. I figured, okay, maybe this will be the year. So it just kind of fits that way. And not only
Yep.
that, like the first two movies of this month for August are going to be early Robert Altman, like 1970 and 1972 or something like that. And then we're going to jump ahead to the later part of his career for his last two movies. So it's going to be this big gap in time, but it's going to be interesting to see the beginning of his career and the end of his career.
Yes, we will be ending with a Prairie Home Companion, our first ever opportunity to talk about Lindsay Lohan, which is kind of fitting given Freakier Friday is coming out in the month of August as well.
Yeah, don't get me started on their popcorn bucket for Freaky Friday at AMC.
Anyway, for Brian, I'm Jerome. Thank you so much for listening. We will talk to you again next week.